Hello. Tonight is August 3rd. It's a Friday, and this is Sandi Laratonda, and today we're going to be talking about fears and why we have them, how to release them. I know that a lot of the ADHD, ADD issues surround fear, and fear is a very difficult thing for some people sometimes. Well, heck, for most people, all the time, right? So we have a lot of different things that we could talk about with fear. But have you ever really stopped and thought about where it comes from? Like, have you ever really just sat and thought about why you're afraid of something? Most times, if you do, you'll realize that you were taught to be afraid of that thing. And when you're taught to be afraid of something, it doesn't go away easily. It's ingrained. It becomes a part of us. And when it's time to change, it's not so easy. So, ask yourself a few things. Whose fear is it? You know, let's say you're determined to do something. You're all amped up about it. You are ready to go. And then that fear kicks in and you're like, put on the brakes. No, I don't want to do it. Why? What happened? You were just ready. What stopped you? Fear. You want to do it, but you're kind of scared at the same time. You're ready to take action, but you keep finding excuse after excuse after excuse to delay actually starting something because you're afraid. You don't know where that fear comes from, but I can help you locate that, and I can help get rid of it. A lot of the stuff with ADHD and ADD is revolved around fear. And fear is something like comparing yourself to someone else. The keeping up with the Joneses. Fear is telling yourself it won't work. It might work, but what if it doesn't? And then you go with the what if it doesn't part. Fear can be not feeling confident about what you know. Fear can be being afraid of what other people think of you. How many of you have ever been afraid of what other people think of you? Yes, right here. I think we all have. I don't know if it's as much of what people think, or is it a fear of people not valuing what you have to say? And that happened a lot with me. I grew up in a family where what I said sometimes was not valued at all. And I learned that my words didn't mean anything, at least not to some people. But as an adult, I learned how to shift that mindset. And you can shift your mindset. It's simple. And you don't need years of therapy to do it. You just need to realize some things. And after you realize those things, it kind of flows easily away from you. So, those thoughts I had just talked about, they're driven by fear. Anything you say that stops you from doing something, that comes from your mind, and your mind is in fight or flight mode. It's trying to protect you. It's saying, oh, no, that's a risk. That seems like a risk to me, and I don't want to do it. So I'm not going to do it. To get rid of fear, it's not, conquering stage fright kind of fear. You don't need to get up on stage and prove to yourself that you can do it, and then you come off and you're all adrenaline pumping and shaking and everything, and next time you go up, you're still afraid. That's not the right way. That's not how to reduce fear, or release it for that matter. So I can teach you how to embrace that fear. And you're probably thinking, what? Why would I want to embrace fear? I'm trying to get rid of it. I'm trying to get a handle on my anxiety, and I'm trying to get fear as far away from me as possible. I understand. In order to release fear, you have to embrace fear. You have to love it. Love it to let it go. I know that must be a new concept to some people. If you embrace the fear that causes those terrifying feelings, you could have a really good breakthrough. So we're able to do great things. We're able to do amazingly great things. And what stops us? Fear, right? First of all, there are ways that you can combat this. One is to surround yourself with a strong community, like our group. Surrounding yourself with the right people makes all the difference. If you want to be something better than the situation that you're in right now, surround yourself with people who are in the situation you see yourself in. Then when you get into that, level up. It's like gaming. Don't doubt your capabilities. You're able to do this. Your community that you surround yourself with will help you move. What if you were surrounding yourself with a community of naysayers, with a community that is doing nothing but keeping you down and keeping you stagnant and stuck right where you are? Because, Mondays are awful, and, thank God it's Friday, and, Monday, it's awful to have that kind of a mindset. I want to get up in the morning and say, all right, Monday, let's grab this day and get going, I used to think people like me were annoying. And you can do great things with your life despite fear. You just need to recognize it and say, oh, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to stop me from being the best me that I can be. No, I'm going to acknowledge you and I'm going to let you go. So doing that is easier said than done. And I can help you do that. You have to do it small. Start small. You're probably thinking right now, well, what if I do let her try to help me and I fail? What if I can't do it? What if I'm not going to be able to accomplish that? What if this gets too big? I don't want to try and fail again. Wow, that's your mind just telling you that you failed again. It's saying you're not worth it. You are not worth it enough to try to do something to better yourself. You can't listen to that voice. Don't listen to the voice in your head, your mind. Listen to your heart. This is a heart-centered thing. Your heart knows what you want to do. Your heart knows what's best for you. Your heart's that little voice that whispers in your ear and says, oh man, remember what you wanted to do when you were 6 years old? You wanted to grow up and be an astronaut? Whatever happened to that? What happened to that is people coming in and telling you, oh, you can't do that. No, that's not going to be a good career for you. Yeah, except without the hand puppets. But, there's a simple way to make it from start to finish without going all over the map, stuck in a maze of fear. You can get right to point A, to the end, to point B, without fear. How? Well, you have to change your focus. You have to focus outward. So a lot of our fears are focused inward on ourselves. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't make a difference? What if I don't know enough? What if I don't have the knowledge to make this happen? What if I fail? What if you fail? Try again. Try again. So, embracing your fear is more than just trying and failing and trying again. Embracing your fear is actually acknowledging it and then releasing it with love. And that sounds really, really odd that you would be able to release your fear with love. That's what you have to do. Because that fear is not coming from here. That fear is not coming from your soul. That fear is coming from your mind. And it's coming from this mindset that has been trained since you were born. It has been training you to be afraid of risk, to be afraid of taking a chance. I mean, think about it. What does our school system teach? It's the industrialized education system. It's teaching kids to be factory workers, go to desk jobs. Maybe, okay, go to college. Maybe, have a career where you have a little bit of autonomy, but you still have to work to please people, make them happy, because you get evaluations, right? Your boss has to tell you you're doing a good enough job, and, if you want that raise, here's what you're going to have to do. But we don't need to live like that. We don't need to sacrifice our health and happiness in order to fit that paradigm. That's a mindset shift, That's, that's a huge step, but it's one of the most integral pieces to this process. So how do you let go of this fear? Do you know that by the time you're 6 years old, you've already unconsciously taken on the fears of your parents, of your mom, or your dad, or your grandma, or your grandpa, or whomever it is that you lived with or grew up with? Maybe some older siblings. You've taken on that fear. You may have seen it yourself in your own children. If you've had children that are, one might be significantly older in age. My son and daughter are 5 years apart. And I could see my daughter taking on some of my son's fears. Looking back now, I can see my son taking on my fears. I recognize them now, so I can point them out. And I can dismiss them because I'm in charge. I control me. My fears don't control me. So you need to learn to distinguish that voice. What's really your true self talking and what's the fear. You'll need to distinguish it. I can help you do that. If you call it your ego, that's your fear, your ego. That's the, I need to look good, I need to sound good, I need to feel good about myself, I need to prove myself to this person that I can do it, I need to prove myself to my boss so I can get that raise. That's the ego. The heart, totally different. The heart does something not for a reward, not for an extrinsic value, but an intrinsic value. Intrinsic means like within, because it just makes you feel good, makes you happy, makes you proud to be a human, helping another human, The ego gets loud, really loud, when fear starts running the show. The ego is going to speak loudest when fear is at its highest point. It keeps you from taking the useful messages that, your heart has for you. So how do you find out what these messages are? Well, meditation, getting into a quiet space. I know you're on Facebook right now, and I appreciate it, and I love you for this. But get off Facebook and spend some time with yourself in quiet, in solitude, because that's when you start hearing yourself. And get a little uncomfortable maybe at first, but you'll get used to it. And the biggest thing you need to do is when this fear comes up, you need to figure out if it's your ego or if it's something really, truly to be afraid of. Why is this ego spouting off these false fears? Why is it enforcing this set of rules that I learned in my childhood? Why am I letting my childhood rules control me? Still, in my 40s, as an adult. They're false fears. You might be afraid of something because your parents were afraid of something. Maybe you're fearing stepping out into your greatness because your mom feared it. And she unconsciously put those fears onto you, that it wasn't safe, it wasn't the right choice, it was too big of a risk. We tend to inherit fear like a virus. It's passed from generation to generation, and we take on the fears of our parents. I've said that. We're programmed. So we have some common operating beliefs. You know, I bet your computer has an operating system. We have some common operating beliefs for our human system. Bad things happen when you're not in control. Have you ever stopped and took a step back and really thought about, are you really in control of whatever it is you're worrying about? Do you truly have control over a specific situation? Probably not. So take a step back, release it. If you can't release it, set it down, walk away for a little bit. You'll reassess later. Another thing that we can do is be vulnerable. You're like, oh, whoa, I'm out of here. Nope, not being vulnerable. No, that feels awful. Well, it feels equally as awful to keep your guard up all the time. Do you ever get tension in your shoulders or headaches, stress headaches they call them? Maybe do you ever get like yucky feelings in your stomach, or you can't sleep because you're full of anxiety? That's holding on to vulnerability. That's holding on to being so concerned that you're going to be judged that you don't let your real self show, and you keep your guard up all the time. You're flying under the radar. You're like, oh, I'm going to live under this rock, and, I'm not even going to poke my head out because all hell's going to break loose. I'm going to be right here, and this is where I'm going to stay because it's comfortable, and I know this space, and it's cozy, and it's safe. There's another fear that if you take a chance and you do something that isn't safe in your world, like maybe public speaking, that's a characteristic fear, that something bad's going to happen. Meteor's not going to fall out of the sky if you go make a speech. You're not going to shoot spaghetti out of your nostrils if you give a speech. It's just something that you're needing to get over. You're going to need to try to put yourself out there, to shift your mindset, to say, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of me. It matters what I think of me. And it matters what I'm contributing right now. Like, what is my contribution? You have to prioritize what's certain in your life. What I mean by that is, okay, I live in a house, but I have to pay a mortgage. I have a car, I have to pay the auto payment, if you have a car payment, or insurance on it. Maybe, I have to keep my bus pass updated. I grew up in the city. I was a Pittsburgh girl. And I took public transportation for a very long time. So, I had to keep my bus pass updated. If I didn't get to work. And if I didn't get to work, I didn't pay the bills. I couldn't keep my job. So, there's that whole you have to work your ass off to survive. That's false too. You can really do what's heart-centered for you. You don't need to work for someone else. You don't need to be unhappy in a job that you hate because it has good benefits. You don't need to be unhappy in your work because it has good hours. Who told you that that was something that you had to settle for? Fear did. Fear did. A lot of us were taught that life isn't fun if it's pleasurable. Life isn't secure if it's pleasurable. Life just doesn't work if you have fun, right? There's another fear. You can have fun all the time. It's just how you interpret things. That fear, it's not you. That fear is not your body. That fear does not make up your cells. That fear is not the clothes that you put on. That fear is a false thought in your mind that your mind grips onto so tight that it affects everything else. And that's what causes your stress. That's what causes anxiety. That's what causes breakdowns. I mean, how many of you take a pill to go to work? Some people are on antidepressants. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. But did you ever stop to think, would you still be doing that? Would you still be needing that antidepressant if you were doing something that made you happy at your heart level? So, that's a big fallacy, that life has to be miserable if we're doing it right. It's Monday. So, maybe you have a dream and you don't follow your dream because it's not realistic or you're not being responsible. How many of you have heard that? Maybe you think everyone's out to get you, that you are going to run into negativity anywhere you go, so you just stay under your rock and you protect yourself. Maybe, you have to feel like you have to be perfect all the time. I can't leave the house without my hair perfect or my makeup. I can't leave the house without looking, great. Hey, if that makes you feel good, more power to you. But if you're afraid of being judged for what you really look like without all that fancy stuff, that's fear. So, like I said before, if you're just joining me, fear is inherited. It's like this virus. And by the time you're 6 years old, you have downloaded the fears from your mom, from your dad, from whoever raised you. And, the fear can show up as a need in your life when you're an adult. What if you have an issue with money? Let's say that you have an insatiable need for more money. Even when there's food on the table, even when there's enough money in the bank. Hi, Kelly. Even when you have more than enough, you have plenty, yet you still have this fear for money. Well, think about it. Were you raised by parents that maybe were raised by parents who lived during the Great Depression? If they lived during the Great Depression, then they had a true fear about starvation, lack, losing their house. It was a horrible time. But it got better. But that fear never left. And they were living in fear. So that fear got passed down to their children, which were your parents. And then your parents unconsciously had that fear. And that fear stayed with them. And then it transferred to you. So now you have that fear that there's a lack, but you have enough. It's right here in front of you. You see this with your own eyes. Yet your brain keeps telling you, no, we can't do that. We can't take that risk. We have to save. Maybe it's not what you think. Maybe it's a fear that was downloaded when you were younger. There's a lot of scientific evidence that backs up this fear stuff, generational fear. And it's kind of how you are connected to a scent. If you've ever smelled something and it brought you right back to a moment, to a memory. Mine is, Christmas cookies. My mom and my sisters and I, we would be in the kitchen for an entire weekend over Thanksgiving. Yes, that early. We froze them. And we would bake, we would bake Christmas cookies all day, 2 days straight. So I smell that and it automatically takes me back to that happy spot. So if that can do that with scent, fear can be passed down through memory and action. It's the same thing. So, Bruce Lipton is a really, really great guy to watch. If you just go to YouTube and type in Bruce Lipton like the soup, Lipton, and he teaches this thing called the biology of belief. And it's basically, you're not a victim of your genes. You're not a victim of the programming by the generations that came before you. You don't have to abide by their rules. They're not your rules, they're their rules. You have your own. So, even if your genes reflect this, even if it is within you, and your thoughts and your beliefs and your feelings and your physical environment were all created by this preconceived notion handed down generationally. You know, maybe they're not yours. They don't belong to you. They belong to another generation that feared, and you have nothing to worry about right now. So, becoming aware of these fears is half the battle. Letting them go is the other half. So, if you're aware of them, you can reprogram your subconscious mind. And I can show you exactly how to do that. While I was looking through our group, I was looking through a lot of things that people were saying that are fear-based. There's a lot of fear in this group. Yeah, I'm worried about my child. Of course, sure, you're a mom. That's natural. Me too. I worry about my children. I'm worried about school. I'm worried about them not being successful on a test. I'm worried that this teacher's not going to treat them right, or I'm worried they're not going to be successful in life, or not going to have the opportunities handed to them, not handed to them, but available to them that they may have if they didn't have ADHD. I mean, what happens? Are those really your fears, or are those society's fears? It's a difficult mindset. Letting go of fear, it's a process, but it doesn't take years of therapy. You can do it in a couple weeks, honestly. It's just a couple of aha moments, and you write down some things that, you actually reflect on. Heart center, not head. Because your head doesn't know what's going on. Your head is just kind of like, it's the control center. Have you ever seen the movie, oh my goodness, I can't remember what it's called. But it's the movie, it has the little characters in the mind. There's joy and sadness, and it's an anger and envy, all of the emotions. And they're just driving the brain, and they're driving the body. Okay? And joy is really the one who's kind of in control of the whole thing. But joy doesn't live in our brain. Joy lives in our heart. And we have to connect to our heart center to be able to release our fears. So how many of you guys meditate? How many of you take time every day to be in a quiet spot, to sit and actually listen to yourself, to put down your technology, to unplug for a while, and just be? Maybe you do it on a walk. Maybe you do it during yoga class. Maybe you zone out when you're spinning, on like a cycling class spinning. Maybe you zone out on your way to work, on your drive. Lots of different ways you can do it, but that's when you really hear yourself. That's when you really hear what you're afraid of. And if you listen and you know how to apply some strategies, you'll know how to combat that fear and push it out right away. So, you can be gentle with yourself. This is not a harsh process. You have a lot of aha moments. But I was thinking that if you're interested, I have a lot of information and a lot of activities about combating fear and about releasing fear. And knowing what those false fears are for you as the parents, so you don't pass them on to your children. Just because you've passed them on, and that whole science thing, by age 6, you've already shared your fears with your children. It doesn't mean that they can't be corrected. But you don't have to wait until your child is in their 30s or 40s to realize they need to correct the false fear you gave them. You can do it right now. All you have to do is realize it, and you have to be heart-centered and committed to doing it. So I have an idea for a really great 4-week class. And since you guys were talking so much about the things that worry you, and in our Manifestation Monday post the other day, talking about if you waved your magic wand, the things that you would change, you can do that. You all have a magic wand. You just need to get rid of the fear. And that fear comes from that specific mindset. So, all right, one of our group members asked, how can I learn to listen to my heart instead of my head? Well, you have to consciously be aware of what your heart voice is saying. And I have strategies, I have activities, I have one-on-one sessions I can do with you that will help you center yourself and will help you listen to what you're really thinking and help to identify what is a false fear so that false fear doesn't get passed on to your child, so that false fear doesn't have to define your life anymore. How many of you would like to be free of fear? Oh, thank you. Thank you. The movie was Inside Out. Thanks, Mark. Lifesaver. Yeah, Inside Out with anger and joy and sadness and, the memory balls. But it's joy from that movie. Joy. She lives here. She's heart-centered. And you know what? She's green. And green is the heart chakra. Coincidence? Nope. There's no coincidences. So if you're watching this right now, you're supposed to be. And if you have any questions about fear, or if you're just joining me, thank you. I'm really glad you're here. And we're talking about fear. We're talking about trying to live through false fear, fear that has been passed on to us from generations ago. So anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody struggling with any particular fear issue right now? I'll keep you anonymous. You can just pop in with a question, message me with a question, and I'll take a look at it. Okay, I'm getting some private messages here. All right. What if you have a fear of finding out your fear? That's very valid. Well, you combat it the same exact way. Having a fear is nothing more than getting that ego-based mind to think heart-centered. And that's all you have to do. I can teach you how to do it. So, a lot of this spiritual shift happens when you shift your mindset. To shift the ADHD paradigm, you shift your mindset. To shift all the problems that come with ADHD in public education, you shift your mindset. So that's what I do. I'm a mindset coach, for lack of a better term. I teach you how to shift your mindset. I teach you how to listen to what's really important, let go of what's not important, so then you don't have to suffer from all that fear and anxiety. So you don't have to have children that come home from school and have meltdowns as soon as they walk in the door. So you don't have to field those phone calls from school saying, oh, well, your child wasn't paying attention, so maybe you can come in for a conference and we can talk about why. Maybe it's to get through homework time after school. There are a lot of things that are specifically necessary for our indigo and crystal children to be able to thrive in their being, in their selves, and to be their best self, at their best and highest good. Don't you want that for them? I want that for you. I want that for everyone. That's my life's mission, is to help people understand the beautiful, beautiful thing that this ADHD diagnosis is. Regular society is calling this an issue, a disorder, a diagnosis. It's ascension. It's an energy. And it's a beautiful energy that we can harness. Okay, I fear school for my child. That's a very, very normal fear. That is something that is, easily compatible. what grade is your child going into? So elementary, middle, high school? Is it a new school? Like, tell me a little bit of the background about the fear, and then I can work through it with you. And we'll try a strategy, one of the strategies I would use in my course. Because I don't feel that fear should be an issue for anyone. I remember what it was like to be consumed by fear. Third grade? Okay. Oh, my daughter's going into third grade. Yeah. She's freaking out because she has state standardized tests this year. Well, um, what is the certain, like, specific fear? Name the specific fear that you're worried about. New school. Gotcha. Okay. So, brand new school, don't know any of the teachers, any of the kids, nothing. Okay. Um, okay. Okay. I'm reading comments as we're going through this. All right, Kelly. So, your child, son or daughter, doesn't matter. I just want to be able to say he or she. Um, so, you moved in from Illinois, and third grade is going to be brand new. So, we don't have the friends from the first 3 years. So, what are some of the what ifs? Because that's how fear kind of materializes itself. What are some of these what ifs that are coming up into your mind from this? I see. Yes. Thank you. Okay, he's full of energy that gets misunderstood. I completely understand that. Um, there are ways that he can learn to contain his energy in certain situations. Um, he can learn that school does not need to be painful. It doesn't need to be troublesome. Um, and that he is more than capable of controlling himself and his actions in certain situations. And that if he does have, an outburst, or he does have an event at school where maybe he does something energetic when it's not an appropriate time to do it, that he doesn't beat himself up for it, that he doesn't say that he is a bad student, because we all fear that, they're going to label our child. And quite often, that's what happens. Um, but he can learn that he vibrates on a higher level. He's probably, an indigo through and through. Third grade, I'm thinking, age-wise. And indigos need a lot of exercise. They need a lot of outlet time. They need a lot of, outdoor, connected to nature. The reason why kids this age are so addicted to technology is because it's an escape for their mind. Whereas outside, before we had all this technology, being outside was the escape. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. My son's the same way, very, very hands-on. And that's a very common trait you'll find in indigo children especially. They're the thinkers, they're the builders, they're the architects, they're the artists and the musicians. Very, very much hands-on, how things work. My son takes stuff apart and puts things right back together without directions, just like my husband when he was his age. It's a beautiful thing. And our school system isn't designed to handle that. Our school system is knowledge and spitting it back out. So you have to memorize how to do things. Well, there are certain things in school that you do have to memorize. Things that are just going to make your life easier. Um, oh, nice. You moved to a house on a lake. Beautiful, beautiful. My parents are selling their house on a lake. So that's going out of my life, but I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be gorgeous. So I think that, sorry, my husband said rumors. because of his comment about, taking things apart and putting them back together without directions. I've seen it, so busted. Um, anyway, we have a lot of similarities with our sons. And school is a place where you have to sit down and you have to memorize things. Once you get to about the third grade level, the need for memorization of most of the things is already done. Your basic rules for spelling, your basic rules for math, your basic rules for reading and writing. You have all that. Like by the end of third grade, you're good. That's not to say you stop school, certainly not. You use those same constructs to build throughout the rest of your schooling. And then the rest of it's just kind of an experience. History, philosophy, English literature, all interesting things. But are we really in a position where a hands-on kid who is, high math and science, is he really going to be someone who's going to be doing very well in like a U.S. history course or a English literature course? Probably not. And then what happens? That child then becomes self-conscious. They become driven by fear. I'm not going to get this grade. Oh my gosh, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to do well on this test. Do you know how many kids I've seen with horrible test anxiety in my 19 years of teaching? I've seen so many kids get sick that, they have to leave the room to go vomit. It's terrible. But to get back to your question, Kelly, we have a lot of strategies that you can do with your child, with your son, to calm him down. A lot of things that he can fall back on at school when he's feeling a little antsy, a little out of control. Things that will really help him center and control his energy. And it'll really help combat a lot of that. So I've designed a lot of courses, actually. So if you're interested in setting up an awakening assessment with me, and that takes about 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, and we can talk about your specific needs, your specific issues, and how I can help you. And I have a course starting actually at the end of this month. And because we're talking about fears, I was thinking about running a shorter kind of like mini course, kind of like on a back to school thing, just to help people combat their fears. So I'm getting some issues here with my connectivity. I'm getting some messages from my internet provider saying my connectivity is not great. So I'm hoping that you guys can still hear me. We do have storms coming through. Again, we're in the Northeast, so Pennsylvania, it's very wet here. All right, well, thank you for joining me, and thanks for talking with me about fears. And please continue to comment about your fears. Message me. We can set up an awakening assessment, and that is simply just seeing where you are and if you're ready for help with that mindset shift that's going to get you out of that box and that's going to help your child and you flourish. I look forward to talking with you. Thanks for joining me. Love and light.